All right, you guys, in this video, I'm really excited because I'm in the process of buying a new property in a new town that I'm not 100% familiar with. And I really wanna make sure that I'm buying a strong investment that's gonna make me money. Ideally, 20% ROI. So in this video, I'm working with my buddy, John Bianchi. Hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, buddy. Known as the Airbnb Data Guy. No joke, this dude is a wizard when it comes to analyzing cities, Airbnbs, finding out what area, what zip code makes the most amount of money. Is it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or is it a 4-bedroom, 2-bath? Do you need a fireplace, a movie theater? Like, all of this data, and he pulls up the most insane data. I'm gonna sit down with him, interview him, we're gonna chat, I'm gonna ask him a bunch of questions, but I'm also gonna jump on the computer and show you guys kind of what I'm doing right now on how to find that property. So in the past, I've always been pretty comfortable with the area or city that I'm investing in. I know what works, and then I jump on AirDNA and I jump on Airbnb, and then I go with my gut. But now, those times have changed. Airbnb is a lot more competitive. Certain markets are very saturated, and I don't want that big of a risk. I want to know like 98% chance that this place is gonna make me money in any market I invest in. So what I did is I signed up for John's program. It's freaking amazing. He's fine-tuning it. It's gonna be live to everybody really soon. He pulls up all the Airbnbs in my listing, in my area, and then that way I can dive in. We're gonna talk about it a little bit, but man, I'm excited because I'm learning a ton. I'm hoping I can teach you guys this process as well. As I learn it, let's jump into it. All right. You guys, I've been telling you about this guy forever. Officially, his name is John, OG John. So both Johns had to get together. But I think most people know you as like the Airbnb Data Guy. Would that be fair to say?
I hope so. I mean, that's what I've been trying to tell everybody.
So for you guys that are sleeping under a rock and don't know who John is, as you guys know, I've been doing Airbnb for a long time. My first property, I literally bought it and didn't even run a single number. I was just like, oh, I probably can make this work. Second property, I was playing around with AirDNA a little bit. I didn't really dive in that much more. And then as I started growing this as a business, I was like, man, this is pretty risky just to like buy a property on true gut feeling. John and I somehow crossed paths. I think it was through Rob Built's channel. I think because we both do coaching calls, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We actually met in person at the one conference for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And got along real well, and then ended up seeing each other on Rob Built. And I was like, nice. Good to see you.
Yeah. Hey, cool. And now I've been diving in, man. I've been probably driving this guy nuts. I keep asking like all these like nerdy questions because like for me, running numbers just, to be honest, was never really my thing. I get a little overwhelmed by like seeing a bunch of numbers. I go with my gut and what I think I can do, but that industry is long gone. There's no way you could do that. I mean, maybe you could. So I started taking your course and diving in full speed. I'm probably rushing it a little bit, but the course is so amazing and it literally fine-tuned. I'll let you explain it better, but it basically like opened my eyes to the kind of data and stats and numbers that you can realistically find and get and go through, which I found one of the most important was bad data. I didn't even know bad data was really a thing. It always looked bad, but you're like, is that really bad or is it? So yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I love your content too. It's amazing. It's like, I just wanted to get on here and introduce you to everybody and share your wisdom so everybody else can not buy and lose, right? So if you can introduce yourself, give a little bio, would be sweet.
Yeah, for sure. First off, appreciate it, man. Like this is, I could talk to you for like 2 to 3 days in a row if I wanted to. And I love all your data questions. Like don't stop them coming at all. But for your audience who doesn't know me, I'm John Bianchi, the Airbnb Data Guy. I go by that because that's all I do all day, every day. I'm the head of data for TechVestor, which is the largest short-term rental investment fund in America. I also have my own Airbnb data consulting business. I have about 3 free Airbnb data courses that are on YouTube, so you can literally just go find those and learn pretty well everything that I know. And on top of that, I'm also coming out with a software revolving around Airbnb data as well. Naturally, just because I find that there's a faster, cleaner, easier way to be able to get through this data, to be able to get to the answers. And for a very long time, I've been, helping people with this through reports and stuff. And so now I'm just working to get it out into the software, which you have had early access to, and you got to go through the training with it. And I just, honestly, like, my favorite thing in the world is when somebody like you is not a data person, but you are like, hey, I should probably look into this. And then you start to review the information, and then you're like, oh shit, there's something to this, right? Like, but it's, and like you're starting to get it, right? You're like, okay, I can see what I'm supposed to do here. I see what I'm supposed to be looking for here, right? Like, even the fact that you just mentioned good data, it to me, it's the funniest thing, because like, there's not a single podcast that I've gone on where I haven't talked about Airbnb data. There's no presentations that I've ever done where I don't talk about bad data. And so, sorry, I meant to say bad data, but anyways, it's fun to be here. That's a little bit about me for anyone who doesn't know me. But I'm excited to just, get into it with you.
Yeah. And like you and I were talking offline, like you and I will just get on the call and just start shooting the shit. And like, I'll ask you questions. You'll show me something so cool that I didn't even think about. And I was like, wait a minute, maybe we should record some of this. It'd be so cool to show people, show people a lot more than just me. So at least John gets more out of this than me just bugging him on the DMs all the time.
Doesn't bother me at all, man. Keep it coming.
It's so cool. Like, we did a call the other day on the channel, and there was a gentleman trying to buy a pretty luxury house in a pretty high-end city. And at first glance, you're like, oh, dude, buy the house. You're going to kill it. And then once you started diving in, I was like, oh, man, this might be a bad investment. It's gonna be a lot harder than it looks on paper.
Yeah, that one. So what you're referring to is the call that I do, where I go in and I will evaluate people's properties live and go through the process with them, so they can see my process of what I'm doing to be able to get to that answer, and being able to figure out if it's going to be a good purchase or not, right? And that guy had bought like a $2+ million property, hoping for it to make like nearly $400,000 or something along those lines. Can't remember exactly what it was, but it was up there, and the data did not 100% support that. So it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I think once we started diving in, the data was like 225, maybe 250, maybe, and we're like, still not bad at all. But
yeah, still not bad, but for the purchase price, it was a little scary, that's for sure. But it's just like there's data out there. The data exists, and if you can go through it, you can get to the answer. And the crazy part is that there is a process that has been talked about by quite a few people, myself probably the most out of anyone. And if you were to just take about an hour to 2 hours out of one day, right? Like one day after work, watch a few videos, you would be able to understand what that process is. And once you understand that process, you can then start going through the data, right? Like, you literally, like, last week had, or the week prior to that, started going through that process. Am I right?
Yeah, totally. And I'll be the first to admit, I've been hosting since early 2016, right? And most of all my properties outperform what I thought it would do on my really ghetto chicken scratch like numbers, and like looking at long term and a little bit of Airbnb, trying to figure things out, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking into a new territory in Arizona. I guess I'll say it, but Payson, Strawberry, and Pine. Now everyone's going to go start looking at those areas. Watch. And I know the area, but I don't know it on a real estate purchase and a short-term rental purchase, right? And money's tighter now because the interest rates, and I have multiple homes. I got to make sure they're all successful at this point, so I got to be a little bit more careful. So I was reaching out to you and asking you some questions. That's what led me to take your course, and I started building out these spreadsheets, and there was like maybe a few hundred listings in each little city, because they're all kind of like surrounding each other.
Yep.
And then I started putting them in your spreadsheet, and it was like bad data. This one didn't make sense. This one maybe makes sense. And then I started narrowing it down, and it started giving me more and more confidence. And I'm like, okay, this one at like, I don't even know, like 200K. There's no way that's right. There's just no way. The next one below it was like 120K. But it's been really fun process, right? Because I'm looking at it as a whole different level. I can look at a listing in like 2 minutes and kind of tell if it's doing good or not, or if it's professionally or not, with like the photos and the listing description and like that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the numbers, I'm always like, I'm not 100% sure. How do I find this out? So like, with you, a good example, like say this area, if you could just briefly tell people when you're looking at a new area, someone like you're looking at areas all the time, so there's no way you're going to have like a personal connection to all these places or really know anything about them. So for you, it's strictly data. Can you kind of explain that when you kind of like look at a new territory? I can. What I want to say first though is I love hearing this of what your experience is, what feeling like as you're going through this, because this is exactly what I want people to feel and understand, because the amount of, I've had so many people tell me about the exact experience that you're going through right now, where it's like the main word that it comes out of everybody is confidence. They're like, I feel way more confident. And they're like, I know that this property here is not making any money, and now I know what is making money, and I know that I should be focusing on these things. And I'm like, I've heard it literally so many times now that but it makes me as happy every single time, because I'm like, nice, another person gets it. You know what I mean? I got another one, you know? Yeah. And it just feels good. So anyways, my process for looking into a market that is, a market that I've never been to, what am I looking for to figure out if it's going to be a market that's worth going into? So the first thing's always regulation. I feel the need to be able to say that because everybody thinks that they should just go straight looking into these markets, and they forget that they could save a whack load of time if they just check the regulations before checking the market, because most markets are not legal in the first place. So that's just like a little footnote of, hey, do this first, right? And then the next thing I do is I'm looking for properties that meet the 20% rule. So I want to find a property where the the revenue is 20% of the purchase price. So if I'm buying a $500,000 home, I want the home to make $100,000 a year. That's my metric to be able to see if a property is going to cash flow in the way that I care. Now, mind you, I'm always heavily focused on cash flow, just because that's my job. That's what I have to do, right? There's other ways to make money in real estate. So there's a lot of other things you can look for as well. But at a high level, I'm always just curious about the potential for the property to cash flow. And so what I'll do when I go and look at a market like I've never looked into is I'll check to see on a high level how much the properties are generally making and what those properties look like. So let's say I find a whole bunch of properties and they all, look like cabins, and they're all 4 bedrooms within this specific area, and they're all making $100,000 a year. Then I go, okay, well, let's hop over to Zillow and let's see if we can find cabins that are 4 bedrooms for $500,000. And if I can, then I know that there's potential for those properties to actually cash flow, right? And if you can do that fairly quickly, where you can just get like a general feel of what the most common annual revenue is and the most common type of home that you're seeing, and then you can check Zillow, you can check the data provider, and you can see those two and be like, okay, there's potential for there to be properties that meet the 20% rule. And then once you see that, then you can dive deeper into the property or into the market and actually like truly deep dive it, understand everything about it, rip it apart, and try and find the best possible price to rent ratio, which is going to give you the best possible cash flow, right? But that is how I would look into a market at a high level. Dude, so many nuggets in there, right? And this is where I have to admit I've been geeking out on your stuff, like full overdosing to the max on your stuff. Like for my type of investment, I like finding places that I really like. Like if I like the location, I want to go visit every so often and stay in my house. I also, if I find, let's say a cabin or a house, and I can add a lot of value to it, a bedroom, a bathroom, a pool, like repainting, all new bathrooms, whatever it is, that's what gets me like really excited. But the part of the data that I've been like super geeking out on your stuff is able to compare your data and the listings that are live and be able to like, and I'm still learning this part, guys, so like bear with me, but to know that like, hey, I need to look for this price range, and in this city a 3-2 is the best combination, or I can go a 4-3 seems to be probably the second best option. Right away, I can look at some of the data and be like, oh, a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom does not work in this place at all. Like, boom, I just crossed that off the list. And to me, that is like so powerful and so fun. And that's like stage one, right? Before you're going into, which we'll talk about, before you go into like all the amenities and knickknacks and stuff like that. But like, and that's the part I'm learning right now. I'm like, okay, I want a 3-2 maybe, or do I want a 4? And that part to me is so cool, dude. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's so much fun, is it not? Like you're literally just it's the speed that you're getting when you're going through these analysis, where you can just know when you look at something and be like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna buy that. That makes no sense, right? But these 3 bedrooms have potential, and then you start going into like a deep rabbit hole into those 3 bedrooms to try and find the absolute best one, and all of a sudden you have the best possible property, right? And it's trust me, this is what I do all day, every day. So when you say it's fun and you're geeking out on it, I'm like, yeah, I get it, right? Like this is why I love doing it all day, every day.
Dude, the way you do your videos too makes me crack up, because I'll get like, to be honest, I'm doing the course, right? And I get a little stressed out, or like not 100% following. I got to rewind, and I'm like taking notes. But then all of a sudden you're like the most honest, average dude going through the course. It's not scripted. If you mess up, you're like, hey guys, sorry, I have like a really red forehead right now. I was at the lake all day. Like, and dude, it's perfect. It like breaks it up a little bit. You're like, oh yeah, he's a normal guy. Okay. Like, because sometimes the stuff you're sharing, you're like, dude, this guy must be a rocket scientist part-time. Like this is, and then you break it down where it's like, oh, actually the way he's explaining it makes total sense. Just never looked at it that way.
That, like, man, I'm the furthest thing from a rocket scientist without a doubt. Like I'm not. I wish if you guys knew me personally, you would be like, yeah, this guy's not not smart. Like most of my friends think I'm like, I don't know. But when it comes to the data, there, for whatever reason, when it comes to like, it's literally just Airbnb data. I'm sure I could, look into other data, but there's something about the Airbnb data that was just so clear to me. Or in all reality, what it was that I had to get an answer if I wanted to raise money to be able to go start my business. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to raise the money unless I could feel confident with the Airbnb data to be able to show it to the people I was working with. And it was this sort of like combination of like using other people's money to be able to do something like this and ensuring that I had it right. And it like forced me into a mode of doing whatever I could to understand what I was looking at, and I guess I just like really got into it, you know what I mean? And I understood what I was going through, and then what happened for me, like the reason why now I'll hop on this call and like go through this with you, and I have these free trainings, is because I ended up talking to a whack load of other people who did not understand how to go through the data and were buying bad properties. So like you're the scenario where you're the guy where it's like, yeah, I just went on gut and it worked out and it was great, right? And it's like those are the stories where everyone's like, that's so awesome, right? I've heard the exact opposite story so many times that I can't help it but teach other people, right? Like I literally like I think to myself, like I have to do this because sometimes there's gonna be people who are gonna screw up and I could help them avoid that. As an example, everyone's probably thinking like, oh, bullshit, whatever. But the reality is that I've heard a story where this one lady bought a home in Gatlinburg, and the home she loses about $3,000 a month. Every single month, she's out $3,000 on the property. But the kicker is that the property also lost $300,000 of value since she bought it. And so if she were to sell the property to stop having to pay $3,000 a month, she would lose $300,000 automatically. And so like complete worst case scenario, right? And the reality is that if she had gone through my free course on YouTube, she would have been able to avoid making that mistake. And so when I say that I'm out, like, yeah, dude, like, I don't like, I don't know. That's why, if you're wondering why I do what I do, right? And the thing is that's one of the worst stories I've heard, but I've heard of so many other people of like arbitrage deals, and they bought, I literally just reviewed a arbitrage deal. This guy's trying to sell his arbitrage package of properties that are in the Poconos. The properties themselves are decent, but the thing is that they're not hitting the numbers they want to hit, and I know why they're not, because they're not put together properly. They're the wrong size of the wrong location. They don't have the amenities that they need to have to be able to hit the numbers they need to hit. And so this guy has put, each one of these properties anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 of furniture into these properties, and they are losing money, right? So now he's going to have to lose all that. That's somewhere between $25,000 to $100,000 worth of money that is just going to be out of his pocket, plus however much time that he worked on to put that together. Those are the stories of the people that give me the energy to keep doing calls like this and putting together softwares that help people with it and be able to understand it better so that they don't end up in that scenario, right?
Energy is the right word for sure, because I think you and I definitely have the same kind of energy. We get really excited and super passionate about the content we make. We keep it pretty real. That's why I've always connected with you, because it's no bullshit. It's like, you're like, hey guys, I'm telling you for a fact, this is what it is. This is what you got to keep your eye out on. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, I'm just exploring and talking with a lot of people because I have a success rate, right? And I do all my properties are doing really well, taking on some co-hosting gigs and whatnot. But the next part of that journey is other people's money. And like, that scares the living hell out of me, is to go invest with anybody's extra money. And if it doesn't work, like, that's all on my shoulders. And if I can become this expert like you and really learn what you're teaching, at least we can make a way smarter, educated decision. And any of those people that are going to put in money, we can look at all that data and then my experience in hosting and all that stuff. But at least we can look at hard numbers. And then that way, that person's like, okay, I know what I'm getting into. This is what we could make on a high end, a medium level, and if we totally tank. But here, at least we have scenarios instead of just being like, hey, I heard on the news you can make some money on Airbnb. It's like,
right.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Yeah, it's super cool.
I love that, man, because that's I haven't even started doing that yet, because I personally I raised money for an arbitrage business 4 or 5 years ago when I was first getting started, just because I was younger and I was like eager and I was like, let's get this going. I want to start this business and an empire and all this stuff, right? And then things didn't pan out exactly how I wanted them to, and it makes you go, all right, let's pump the brakes, let's build this skill, let's learn what we can learn, right? And then let's take it to that next step of we can do this, right? Like we can build it up, we can do what we're trying to do. So the reality is, me learning all this stuff and how in depth that I've learned it was very purposely done so that I could get better at doing it, so that I can continue to build up my portfolio of Airbnbs over the years. And I just happen to also feel the need to be able to share that with everybody, right? So like, I don't know. I think you're being really responsible with what you're doing by actually going through the process of learning how to understand the data so that you can take on other people's money and not lose that money when you put it into an investment. But one thing I will, throw out there is that my part is just one part of it, right? My part is the ensuring that it's going to be a cash flowing property, whereas there's all the other things about real estate that I don't talk about at this moment, but that are very important to keep in mind as well as you're going through that process, which you obviously know, but I'm just throwing that out there, right? For anyone else who else is listening. Yeah,
man, that is true. And you and I talked about one of my listings. It was a Airbnb Plus listing. It was literally, I think when I did your course and I exported the profit map, mine was number 5 on the top list. So pretty stoked. But I had a weird dip. I had a dip a couple months ago and I could not figure it out. And I'm like, maybe I'm just too close to my own home. Maybe my feelings are getting in the way. Like, what am I missing? So you and I jumped on a call and you pointed out a couple things that I just flat out didn't see or wasn't really paying attention. And that was strictly on data. It had no feelings. Like, you had no feelings behind the place. It was like, hey, I think you should paint this wall. I think you should change these lounge chairs and get more lounge chairs to make sure every guest has them, but not just regular lounge chairs, get more like luxury poolside lounge chairs. And like, I unfortunately I couldn't add a putting green. This is too difficult in that zone, but we went ahead and like did, you know, you and I talked, we added some custom art that nobody else has and just changed up a few things. And then right when I relaunched it with new photos, it was like, boom, we got a booking. Boom, we got a booking. And I have to say, I'm getting far out bookings right now. And usually that area, I don't really get far out bookings. So it's like you said, it's the piece of the puzzle. Like that place was already going. You kind of knew some data. We didn't really go hardcore in the data. We went more into like the amenities because of all the data you've seen. You knew what was working. So that was right.
Yeah, it's to me it was just clear. You know what I mean? Like when I looked at the property, I'm like, oh, like here are the flaws. You know, because I'd done it so many times and reviewed that information so many times. But you know, for anybody who's trying to do that themselves, I just want to give you the logic that I use so that you can understand how to do it yourself. All I'm doing is I'm thinking about the guest experience. That's literally it, right? So when the guest is there with their group of friends, and like picture yourself with your friends, and now all of a sudden you guys are all hanging out in the backyard, and it's like, well, there's 10 of us that can sleep here, and we have 2 sunbathing chairs. It's like, well, that kind of sucks for 80% of the people, right? and so there's like that thought of like, all right, well, what if we change that up, right? Like, well, that would be an easy thing to change up and add. And then, you know, you could do the same thing with like the dining table. How many people can sit around the dining table? How many people can sit around the couch? Those 2 blow my mind how many people screw that up. My place sleeps 12 people. Here's the 6-seater dining table. It's like, what do you mean? Right? Like, what do you mean? You have enough beds for everybody. Make sure everyone can sit together and have a meal together, right? And so it's those little things where you're just trying to understand, like, how are people going to use my property? And then there's the other places where people are staying there for, like, what gets me is the cabins in the woods where people will stay for nearly a week and they have almost no amenities in the property. They don't even have cornhole. They don't have any lawn games. They have almost no board games. And it's like, your property is so boring for that person who has to entertain their children for the next week, right? They're going to be doing everything they possibly can to entertain those kids. And if you just give them a whole bunch of things that they can do that they don't have to bring with them, right? They're going to have such a better time. And that's going to allow you to get the booking over somebody else just because you have all those yard games. And you could buy, if you spent $1,000 on board games, yard games, little entertainment things, you would have so many different things that people would be able to do at your property that they would not be bored the entire time they are there. And that alone would make someone go, yeah, I'll book this property over the other one, right?
Yeah.
Little things. It's the little things.
When you say it like that, it's like, well, duh, why wouldn't I do that? But it's like,
yeah, right.
So crazy. I mean, I help so many people with their listening to, and I see that too. I'm like, what is everyone going to do? Like, you're pretty remote. Right. You're in the middle of nowhere. Like, you don't have anything. Like, you don't even have like a smart TV. This is crazy. Yeah. When you say it like that, you're kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go to Amazon or Game Store right now and just load up.
Right. Yeah. It's
especially if you want those kids, you know, the families.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think, you know, some of the advice that I give all the time is just for telling people that your Airbnb is a business, treat it like a business, right? And if you treat it like a business, then you're going to want to provide more value and you're going to want to outdo your competition. And if you just think about it in those 2 formats, then you're going to be way more inclined to actually understand what you need to do next to improve that property, right? And I mean, like, the idea of thinking about the guest and what they're doing is something that's very common in software, where it's think about the user experience, right? Like, how does someone use Instagram? And then how do I optimize that so that it's a better experience for them? That's what they're doing all day, every day. It's the same thing with your Airbnb. It's the same thing when you walk into a McDonald's, right? Like, there's all these things that they're doing to try and optimize this for the best possible experience. The reason the grocery store is set up the way the grocery store is set up with certain foods in certain areas is because that's how is the most optimal way for people to have an experience of grocery shopping.
Yep.
Anyways, it's a business. Treat it like a business is what I'm trying to say.
Totally. I learned some of that in marketing before about like different vibes of color paint, right? Makes you stay longer. It makes you relax better in the bedroom. It's like, do that kind of research when you're building out. Selfishly question, have you ever like looked at a place that you're like, man, the data makes it seem like this is a good spot. It seems like people are making money. A lot of people are coming here. And then you look at like a handful of the listings and you're like, okay, if all of these places are doing these numbers and doing pretty well, and you don't, I'm trying to word it right, where you're looking at these listings and you almost can't figure it out because the listings don't look that professional. They're not like, they don't have all these amenities, but their calendar is pretty full. They're still getting positive reviews. And it's like, it's kind of a head scratcher.
Yep. I've definitely, well,
I'm sure.
So like the thing is I can't give away all the information because I work with TechMester, right? So a lot of the stuff that I can't give away secrets. I didn't talk about my process, and then you can go out there and do it yourself, right? But the secrets of like what I've found goes right straight to TechMester. But those markets exist, and those are the best markets in my opinion. They're also what I refer to as like a more of a riskier market. Essentially what you're explaining is a market that has demand but has no good listings, and nobody is maximizing their revenue potential in that market. And so we don't know what the true top potential is for an Airbnb in that market. And so you look at the properties and you're like, these properties are good, like the ones for sale. The Airbnbs kind of suck, like you know what I mean, they're not very good, but they're still bringing in a good amount of revenue. And it's like, it may not meet the 20% rule, but you know that your listing would be better than their listing. Now, this is where I always get hung up, where I go, all right, this bad listing is making $80,000 a year, right? And I want to buy a home that's in this market for $500,000. Well, that doesn't meet the 20% rule. However, I know that I can put together a listing significantly better than this one making $80,000. Here, the issue is, are people going to that market willing to spend more on a home in that area, right? Or are they just capped out around that $80,000 a year that people are making? And it's like they're not willing to pay more even if it's that much nicer because there's not a crazy amount of demand in that market for that, right?
Makes sense.
And so that is where there's a little bit of a gut feel that is something that I don't talk about often, right? But you have that gut feel if it's like, you know what, I know I'm going to be able to beat all these listings. There is a good amount of demand in this market. I think if I put together a really strong listing, people will be willing to pay more for it, and I'll be able to hit $100,000 a year.
But yeah, like I said, I could probably talk to you for like 3 or 4 hours, and I know you probably have like 5,000 other Zooms, and you actually have a big investment company that you need to go find properties for. So in short, where can people find you? How can people learn more about your process? And what's a good give us one solid takeaway?
Yeah. So my recommendation to everybody is to go to if you want to learn about Airbnb data, if you have any interest of learning from me and what I teach about, just go to YouTube and watch my free trainings that are out there. You can go to my name, John Bianchi. You can look up the Airbnb Data Guy. I tell everyone to start there because you're going to get all the knowledge that you need to then be able to have an educated conversation with me when the time comes for you to either reach out or do anything further from there. You can obviously follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and stuff like that. You're not going to learn as much as you would learn if you were to go to YouTube. So just start with YouTube and then let it organically go from there, and we'll eventually end up connecting.
Cool. I love that, man.
Yeah, man. Like Thank you again for having me on here. I appreciate it.
I told you, this guy is on another level. He's like the data Airbnb wizard. But I'm going to share all his links below. Hopefully that was really helpful. If you guys are buying a property, I would highly recommend check this guy out. Go watch his YouTube videos. He has 1 million YouTube videos on how he's analyzing all these deals. Yeah, and don't mind the setup, you guys. I'm not in my office where I normally do all this stuff. I'm in Flagstaff. It's cold. I'm bundled up, so the lighting is not the best in the world, but hopefully you guys can hear me. One of the cities I'm looking at is Pine, Arizona, and Strawberry. They're kind of like right next to each other, so there's a lot of blending. But once I go through John's course, I'm not going to show you all that because you have to join. It's kind of private right now, so yeah. But this is kind of what it looks like after I export it from him. He has this amazing spreadsheet. This is the zip code I'm looking at. This is the spreadsheet. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom. So you can see the different revenue here. 5 bedroom, roughly 71,000.
4 bedroom, 66,000, 3 bedroom, 47. You get the idea. So basically you click on these, which I already did, and it pulls up the data right here. So then this is so insanely cool. So all the data shows the title of the listing right here. You can see it. This is the title of the Airbnb listing, what the revenue they're doing per year, the link, and then the reason why some of these are green and blue and say good data is because sometimes there's bad data. So like watch, if I click on this one, and this is kind of what he's talking about, it goes nowhere. So it doesn't go anywhere, goes to the homepage. So this is bad. That's why 136,000 to me at first was like, that's a lot. Why is this one doing so much better than this one at 82,000? But then if I click on this one, 82,000, it will show up. And right off the bat, I'm like, okay, 103 reviews, 4.89. It's on the guest favorite, but this is really promising to me because these photos are completely dog beep. I mean, these photos are horrible. The cabin looks super cool, right? So with this data, you guys, I can do a quick analysis and look, like their occupancy is 96, which is really high. That seems a little off there, but maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to dive into it. Daily rate, 220, bedrooms and whatnot, right? So now it's time for me to do the work. So I go through here and I click on these. Again, I don't really like this kind of data actually from Evolve. John talks about that a lot also, because they do a lot of bookings outside of just Airbnb. So the data is not really accurate because they're blocking out the calendars and whatnot. So I'm actually going to change this to bad data. Bad. And then watch, see. This is why I love it. It's bad. So let's get rid of it. And then you just can go through all of them. You can just start going through them one by one. I'm not going to bore you guys because this video will be way too long. And then what I did is I made a tab, good data. And then I started making notes, bad photos, bad property management company, right? And then I just start going through them. I see, look at all these reviews. And this city has got me confused because there's a lot of poor quality listings, but still getting great reviews and making great money. Look at all this data that I'm going to go through. I'm going to research. And this is kind of the things that are needed to compete with all those. I always like to be in the top 70, 80%. So great photos, duh. Backyard, needs to have a cool backyard. Fire pit, a hot tub, string lights, views. I didn't put this in, but I definitely think cabin vibe is gonna do the best just from doing the research. So putting cabin vibes. Oh, I did put that down here. Oh, yeah, cabin vibes, mountain vibes, escape, right? So this guy is a wizard, man. I mean, it's so freaking cool to me. Now I'm gonna go through all this data, check out the percentages, and what can I do better to beat the entire competition? So just to give you an example, like the highest one is at 137. So let's just do this one. The highest one is at 94,000. I think that's a little bit more accurate. 141 reviews, 3 bedroom, 80% booked, 3 bath, $296 a night. So let me click on this one. Honestly, this is such a good place. I can already tell with the first 5 photos, 204.9 star review. That's super impressive. Like, I feel bad even ripping on this listing, but it's just not a good listing still. The photos are not good. It's such a cool place. The photos are just not good. I can tell this place is insane. Look at these views. Horrible photos. Look how slanted they are. The styling in the house too is not all that great. It's okay, but if you're gonna show the fireplace and highlight it, then turn it on. But at the same time, this is where I'm starting to get confused on this location. That's why I'm happy to start talking with John and learning more about John. Because all these reviews, they're killing it. So, what else could I do to stand out? They did a great listing, spelled it out. So just wanted to run you through that real quick of what everything that John was talking about. But I'm not going to dive too far down this. And if you want me to make another video on this, I can. But otherwise, this video will be 10 hours long.
Hopefully you guys found that very helpful. All the links below. Smash that like button and more videos coming soon.